Hi, welcome to another JP's Chalk Talk session, where we talk about topics on connecting, streaming, and delivering. Now, whether you're new to webcasting or have been in the space for a time as a professional, the goal of this channel is to collaborate and learn when it comes to all things live streaming. Now, I'm kicking off a new effort in this channel called Going Forward, simply Webcasting Tech Series Workshop. Now, I will share more details on this effort soon, so stay tuned. Today, we're going to talk about the 6 ways to improve the quality of your audio and video setup when live streaming or capturing stream later. Now, who better to help us than streaming media expert Jan Ozer? And if you don't know who Jan is, he's an author of several books, active contributor to Streaming Media Magazine, and much more. So let's talk to Jan right now. Welcome, Jan. So glad to have you with us today. Maybe just take a moment or so for your background and tell us about yourself.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for having me. I got into streaming video back in the 90s, working with a compression company, and I kind of caught the bug. And when I left the company, I started benchmarking compression technologies, then started writing about it. And then around 2000, I had a couple of kids and started to chase them around with the camera. And then I got really heavy into the production side because ultimately they became ballerinas and I had to become an event producer. So I kind of self-taught from both a compression standpoint and a production standpoint. Wrote my first book on production in around 2005 and have published probably 20 to 25 books on various aspects of either production, streaming, or just video editing. I've got a lot of books well, not a lot of books, but books on, Adobe Premiere, books on Pinnacle Studio that are kind of long past, and some other editors like that.
That's fantastic. That's, yeah. And in the intro, I kind of gave everybody kind of a snapshot, if you will, of your extensive background. So it's a privilege and I'm just so appreciative of your time to be able to take the time today to talk with us and share with the viewers that'll be watching this. Now, you created a document kind of like basically 6 ways to improve, audio and video in terms of a production or a setup. And you developed this document to kind of give some pointers, if you will, to help people look at what are the key attributes or, maybe principles that we need to incorporate when we're doing a production for streaming.
That's right. I mean, I was producing some webinars for some consulting clients, and every time, I'd gather a panel together, there would be these common mistakes because, we're asking people who have no media training by any extent to look good and to sound good on camera. And rather than kind of continue beating a dead horse, in practice sessions, I decided to put together this 2-page document that could really hit the high points that everybody should know to optimize, the quality of the presentation. It's really unfortunate. We're asking people who are experts in one thing or another, but not production, to come onto our webcasts and to look good and sound good. And they don't have the training for it. They're experts in what we want them to talk on. But if the quality isn't good, the message doesn't come across, and a lot of people, will disregard the content. So it's unfortunate, even though you're an expert in whatever it is, you still have to look good and sound good. And that's what this document, was designed to do.
Absolutely. And so in tying into this document, maybe we can jump into you kind of have some ability to walk us through what the document actually entails, that we could kind of get an idea of that. And for the viewers that are watching this, Jan and I were talking. He's been very gracious to make this document available, including a coupon for a discount, because Jan also does these workshops that he's referring to and these webinars and helping people improve their ability to do what we all do. We all can use areas of where we can have a refresher of sorts. So, Jan, maybe let's just cut to your presentation and allow you to walk through some of the key points of the document.
The document we're talking about is a 2-page document that has, tips on what types of devices to use and how to use them. And the various aspects that we'll discuss are the 6 that you see here. And here's the course. It's a live streaming boot camp. It's available for $99.95. We'll have a discount on that in the coupon. And you see the table of contents over here on the right. And, I targeted the course. I'm kind of a geek, right? So it's not, I tried to get really deep down and technical into the details of how to produce video, with high quality equipment, high quality microphones. So it's not a high level course. I mean, it's really, if you want to know things like, how to use zebra stripes, if you want to know how to connect a microphone to a soundboard or to a camcorder, those are the types of aspects that we cover, as well as all of the streaming related aspects. But let me, if you're interested to see the URL that has all the course details, let me jump into the points that we want to cover. And it all starts with the camera, right? That's the video side. And what you're seeing here is you're seeing 3 cameras compared. And on top is the Panasonic camcorder that I'm actually using for this presentation. On the lower left is an iSight camcorder, and that's the camcorder embedded in the monitor from my Mac. And on the right is Logitech C922 webcam that I pretty much use for a lot of conferencing. This setup is one, I've had 3 video presentations this week, so I thought I'd put together a pretty good setup. But typically, if I'm just doing a conference call, I'll use the webcam with a totally different background. What I like about the camcorder is, it's got the best color. I mean, this is really a purple shirt, not a dark blue shirt or not a blue shirt. It's got the best exposure capabilities, and I've got a little controller that, and you can get this for DSLRs as well, that allows me to adjust both the zoom and the exposure right here at my desk. And anybody who's ever self-produced knows that you end up getting up and sitting down and getting up and sitting down 100 times to get everything right. The ability to have a professional camcorder that you can adjust with these types of controls is really nice. So, that's why for this presentation, I put together the setup using the Panasonic camcorder. Now, I've got an A6300 that I love, and I use that more for courses than for presentations like this, because now I'm working close to a computer. I'm running a PowerPoint slide. The DSLR, to get the nice blur in the background, it's got to be 10 or 15 feet away, which makes it tough to use if you're using a monitor as well. So I love my A6300. A lot of the courses that I produce, or if I'm doing a presentation, I'll use that. But if I'm doing interactive stuff, again, I want to have the camcorder or the webcam a lot closer in. And again, the remote control is a must, because otherwise you find yourself getting up and sitting down a lot. So those are, the camera choices. The embedded webcam in your notebook is, a lot of people do that. That's fine for conferencing. But if you want to give a high quality presentation, you're seeing the good, better, best, and the best is either a professional camcorder or a DSLR. And here's the audio side, and I think to a very high degree, audio is more important than video, because a lot of people who are familiar with streaming understand that you're going to have video degradation, particularly if you're watching via a phone or a tablet or Wi-Fi. But they know that the audio can sound good because they hear that every day. And when you look at people who are producing audio for the internet, I listen to Dan Patrick a lot, Mike Florio, I listen to him a lot as well. Not so big on Howard Stern, but he's obviously one of them as famous there is. And you see all of them using high quality studio microphones, which is what I'm using today. Sometimes I'll use a lavalier, sometimes I'll use the studio microphone here. If I'm in a noisy environment, I'll use a headset. But if you really want the best possible quality audio, you see these guys, they don't care what it looks like. They don't care that, hey, there's a microphone in front of my face. They want to get the best possible audio that they can. And that's because the key messages are typically carried by the audio, not by what I look like. And what I did, this was also for, I put out lessons just as part of the marketing for my courses. This is a broadcast that's available for free on the website here. And what I did for this particular video was I recorded using a bunch of audio sources. So if you want to understand, what a studio mic sounds like as compared to a Bluetooth headset, as compared to a wired microphone, as compared to an iPhone, the corded setup, you can listen to the various aspects there and really kind of judge for yourself. What's interesting about audio is that the more you listen to people who do it just with their notebooks, a lot of times that works, and a lot of times it works well, but sometimes it doesn't. So you just need to gauge the quality of the audio that you're producing. What I do is I just record and then listen to it before I use it in a webcam or other broadcast. And you also have to be, you have to be cognizant of the sounds that's around you. If you're in a noisy environment, then a studio microphone isn't going to work. You really do need a headset, something with a little bit of directionality into it. And you also have to be prepared for echo, because a lot of systems will produce echo, which needs, even if you're using your studio speakers or your computer speakers, sometimes you'll get echo and you need to have a headset handy if the echo occurs, so you can get rid of that. Now, in terms of lighting, again, I talked about the two setups that I use. This is typically what I look like if I'm just in a video conference. And this is no supplemental light. I mean, I've got fluorescent lights in my office. They're off now because I'm using, only studio lights. And what you get is the top-down look. I mean, the forehead looks good, but the bottom of the face looks dark, and then your clothing looks dark. Not that it matters, but you want that to be as optimally lit as possible. And what I did is I had a newer CN160 video light that I use for production, and I just put that on a pole, a monopod behind my monitor. And this is what it takes me. Maybe it's a little bit hot, but you see that, the entire face is well lit because I've got this light sitting right here in the background. And, you can do that with a clamp light. That's what I did before I used the newer. And the things you need to make sure, you've got to watch your color temperature. You've got to make sure the color temperature matches whatever the predominant light is. So I've got color matching. I know that my fluorescents are 5100, so all my light bulbs that I use in implements like this are at 5100 Kelvin as well. And then there's a bunch of different devices that you should consider buying just for webcam use. And all of these should work well, and all of them let you dial in the color temperature. So if you're matching incandescent bulbs one time or cool fluorescent bulbs another, you'll still be able to use this light and not cause any corruption of your overall color temperature. So definitely get one of these if you're doing on a webcam. And I would, no matter who I'm talking to, whether it's a simple Zoom call or whether it's a webinar that I'm just not using this setup for, I will always have the background light because it really does light the face a lot better, which gives you a better image going into the encoder, which gives you a better image going out to all the people who are watching. So always use a video light unless you have really good directional light that's lighting your face. If it's top-down lighting, it's not going to do that. And then this is, if I'm doing training or if I'm doing a webinar, this is the setup you're seeing here. I've got a brick house, but unfortunately I didn't have a brick wall in my office. And, this is the setup I have right now. I've got one light up here, kind of the key light behind the camera, and then I've got two lights mostly shining on the background because I absolutely hate shadows on the background, and that's what these two lights do for me. I've got a studio mic that's sitting up here, and then this is the Panasonic camcorder that I mentioned before. And then again, if I'm shooting training sessions, I'm going to use a DSLR. The DSLR is going to be 10 feet away, and then I'm going to get the slight blurry background that really is quite desirable both from an appearance standpoint and from a compression standpoint. So this is, the lighting I do is kind of 3-point light, but it's more, primary light here. I like using a single primary light because then the shadow is going to be behind me. It's not going to be off to the side. And then I've got two lights that are really shining more into the background than shining into me to make sure that's well lit. But what I like about this setup is that it overall, it shouldn't look like you're lighting the scene. It should look like you're just natural. And I think, hopefully you agree that I've achieved that. Or as close, certainly in this image here, I think it's really close. Now, none of this stuff has to be expensive. I mean, the lighting, this is about a $200 light. This is a $200 light kit. There are better kits available, but really all I cared about, again, was the consistent color temperature. And when I say consistent, between all three of these lighting implements, they're all at, in this case, 4100 Kelvin. And high color rendering index or CRI. And then the remote control is really key again because you want to minimize the times you have to get up. It's going to take you 20 times to get it right, but if you have a remote control for your camcorder and a remote control for your lighting, maybe you'll get it down to 10. And that just makes things go faster and make things go better. And then I like soft lights. Probably the next purchase I'll buy is a soft box or soft box cover for some of these lighting implements because I really like the way the light just kind of envelops you a little bit better than even LED lighting, which is what I have. And I just want to point out that I've got an An article I wrote for Streaming Media Magazine, a buyer's guide to lighting kits, and you can see that at the URL here. Setting the scene, background, and clothing. If I have to pick one color for a background, obviously it would be blue. The reason I have this brick background here set up is because I have a blue wall, as you can see here, and I just didn't like having a flat background because sometimes that can create artifacts of its own. So I chose to put a cover up. This guy here did a nice job putting little items, what I call clutter, that aren't too detailed because that can create compression artifacts as well, but it just makes sure that you don't have shimmering in the background wall. And in this case, they did that as well with this, and also by blurring the background, which is another way to make the background kind of stick out. The background has to contrast with the clothing. Here we're seeing actually a wonderful producer of YouTube videos. In this case, you really need to have a difference between your clothing and your background. And we see in this video the same producer, just, you can see her much better, you can see what she's wearing, and that's a much better look. And what I'm showing here is that you really do need to avoid contrast or extremes in your contrast. So it's called contrast ratio, and it's the ratio between the lightest portion in the video and the darkest portion. And this is, it's a different bookcase. It's the same guy, and it's two different setups. In this case, he's got very light books here. He's got a very dark shirt here, and you just lose detail in the shirt. And I just don't like that look. I mean, I think you should be able to, if it was a regular camera showing on a television broadcast, you probably could see the folds and you could see what he was wearing. But compression and, a webcam will just not have the ability to show both the lightest region and the darkest region. And over here, he's wearing a blue shirt and a tan coat. And you see what I'm talking about. All the detail is preserved. So you never want to wear really, she's got not bright white and not dark black here. And that way you can see good detail in both the background and the clothing. And then for clothing, solids are solids. I would never wear anything with intricate patterns when I'm broadcasting. And these are just from videos that I picked out on YouTube. And I like solid colors. Avoid excessive detail. It might look good at 1080p here. So this is a YouTube video, and obviously YouTube uses an encoding ladder. And he's got a not too highly detailed sweater on, but when you get down to 360p, you have the additional compression, but also the subsampling of the video down to the lower resolution, which creates the artifacts that you see here. The other thing to consider is that, if you're on Zoom or you're on GoToWebinar, you're broadcasting at like 1 megabit a second. If you're broadcasting live like we are, you're going to have a lot higher bandwidth. If you're using Wirecast or if you're using, vMix, you've got 6 or 7 megabits per second going out to the internet. It can support a much more intricate pattern than the 1 megabit per second or the 1.5 megabits per second you get with GoToWebinar and Zoom. So keep in mind, at 6 megabits per second, you can wear almost anything you want, subject to the fact that the subsample versions may look pretty ragged. But for conferencing, I just think you need to stick to solid, because just getting out of your office, you're going to see some degradation. And here's some poor clothing choices. This is a guy wearing and this is old, this is old stuff. This is probably 10 years old now. And this is a blue pinstripe shirt that didn't work out so well. And this is another example of just a shirt that just got mangled by the compression. So solids are best for me, and keep in mind the difference between streaming live through a program like Wirecast or vMix, where you've got full bandwidth, and then conferencing, because conferencing you just have much lower bandwidth, which means much more pressure to have very simple stuff in the background and on your, in your clothing. Framing your shots, this is the thing that drives me crazy, both for conferencing and for webinars. So we're going to, what is framing theory, and we'll stop with the rule of thirds. It drives, and this is, once it tends to drive you crazy when you see people breaking the rules. But, framing is where you're positioned in the frame. And if you look at any television broadcaster, whether it's, sports or news or talk shows, they're always going to adhere to the rule of thirds. And we'll look at what that is in a second. And, you've got to know these rules, because even if your viewers don't know what, even if they don't know what the rule of thirds is, they'll see that and they'll say, well, gosh, this looks wrong. So here's a case where you had a real world video, and you've got a bunch of people who are on camera, and these people are adhering to the rule of thirds. So if you see 2 or 3 people, on ESPN or on CNN, they're all going to be aligned at the eye line, and that's because they're all adhering to this rule called the rule of thirds. And in this particular real world shot, you're saying this guy looks weird, this woman looks a little bit off, because they're not using the rule of thirds. And in this case, this was kind of a simulation for an advertisement for a conferencing system. You see everybody is adhering to the rule of thirds, except this guy got a little down and personal, probably just for a moment. And that's why everything looks very much aligned, and everybody looks, it just comes off better. I mean, if you're running a panel of 5 people, you're broadcasting that out to a bunch of viewers. You want them to look as professional as possible. And again, that's why I created the sheet, because, I hate to keep hounding people about what the rule of thirds is. And here's Anderson Cooper. And basically the rule of thirds is, eye line should be at the top third, as simple as that. That's what I'm trying to adhere to. And if I'm facing the camera, I want to be in the center of the camera. So I don't want to be over here. I don't want to be over here. I don't want to be down here. This is the most basic rule of thirds positioning, because 99% of the time when you're in a webinar or a similar conference, you're going to be looking directly at the camera. So you want to be in the middle, eye level here, and that's it. Once you know it, you know it, and it's pretty simple to adhere to.
Thanks, Jan. That was fantastic. I really appreciate you going through that webinar. I was listening intently and thinking about my background, and I'm going like, well, there's some changes I can make here. There's some things I can tweak there. I think it's a good refresher, because I think a lot of times as we get into this, even as you're talking about your camera and with the Panasonic and lighting and just these little elements make a little bit of difference, or maybe a major difference in how we present ourselves, right? The perception of how we're seen and what we're doing. And especially in a professional production environment where maybe we're working with a client, maybe we're doing something and we want to make sure that, it's conducive and it comes off well. It just kind of blends together in a way that the viewers, those that are watching this video, in fact, have good takeaway notes, right? And they're able to feel like that this was a great, usage of my time, right? And we talk about quality of experience and things such as that. So thank you. That was fantastic.
My pleasure.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me again.
No problem. I was, and so once again, everybody, we're gonna, Jan has been kind enough to, as he talked about the document, we're gonna make that available. We'll make sure the links that Jan pointed out are in the description for everybody to link to, so that you can do some follow-up research, right? And take the time to look at some of the points that Jan made. So Jan, any final comments or things that, maybe that we should think about? I know a lot has changed in the past year because of, the pandemic, and just everybody went online. Is there any pearls of wisdom here and before we close out this discussion?
Yeah, I think that everybody should download the document and should become familiar with the concepts discussed. I mean, the video equipment you don't need to buy a professional camcorder to get this done. You can do it with a $100 webcam. But you just need to know the techniques. I mean, I used a $9 clamp light for a long time as background. So, if you learn the rules, you don't need to spend a lot of money, and video gear lasts forever. I mean, this camcorder is probably from 2005. The studio microphone is probably from 2006. So high quality gear is worth it, but you don't have to, you can get the Blue Yeti for $100, and that will do very, very, much better audio than your notebook. So you don't have to spend a lot. You don't have to spend a lot of time learning it, unless you're actually producing, and then you might want to. But pay attention, and you can produce much better audio and video quality with very minimal expense and very minimal effort.
I want to thank Jan again for his time today. I hope you found today's content helpful. If you did, share your feedback and your comments. It's always good to hear from you, the viewer. Now, please remember to hit the like button and share if you find today's video helpful. And if you're not a subscriber today, hit that subscribe button as we look to grow this channel even further. We'll be sharing Jan's information today, so please check the description for more information and let us know your thoughts. Give us one or two items or three things that you found in today's session helpful. What could maybe an item that we didn't cover that you might like to hear? We'd love to have your feedback on that as well. So stay safe, stay well, and look forward to having you in the next session.